Welcome to Living the Empowered Life podcast. I'm Tamiko Pugh, also known as the Empowering Diva. Each week, you'll hear inspirational interviews as well as actionable tips and strategies that you can implement into your daily life to help you live a life of passion, purpose, and potential. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump into today's episode of Living the Empowered Life. Are you the go-to person in your group of friends? Do you have a zest for life and enjoy helping others reach their full potential? Do you feel a calling to make a difference in the world? If this is you, then you may want to consider becoming a life coach. We have a virtual online training starting soon. Our life coach training focuses on helping women who desire to motivate, inspire, and empower other women by using their skills, expertise, and experience to thrive as a personal development coach. Using the empowerment formula, participants will learn step-by-step tools, tips, and techniques needed to attract great clients and build a thriving, purposeful, and profitable coaching business. Get all the details and register at www.tamikolori.com/life coach training. Welcome to another episode of Living the Empowered Life podcast. I'm your host, the Empowering Diva, Tamiko Pugh. In today's episode, I'll be talking with Dr. Cheryl Wood. We're discussing the importance of women sharing their story and how to create a legacy by using your voice. Dr. Cheryl Wood is an international empowerment speaker, 11-time best-selling author, leadership expert, and master speaker development coach for women. She teaches women the power of owning their story and unleashing the power of their voice. Dr. Wood has trained thousands of women leaders across the United States and abroad in South Africa, India, France, United Kingdom, Canada, and the Bahamas. She empowers women leaders to get out of their comfort zone, courageously take risks, and create a living legacy using their voice. All right, so you have heard her amazing bio and her amazing introduction. Let's go ahead and jump into our conversation with Dr. Cheryl Wood. Cheryl, welcome to Living the Empowered Life podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. I'm excited to have you. So actually, how are you? With so much going on in the world, how are you?
I'm actually doing fantastic. I have been so much more productive during this time than I have been in a long time because by trade, I travel a lot as a professional speaker. So I'm on a plane, a train, in a car somewhere, traveling to somebody's live event to speak. And so now being quarantined at home, it has given me the time to be creative. It is given me time to connect with people the way that I used to when I first started business. So for me, it has been super productive and I'm just so grateful for the time.
Good. You know what? And I actually agree with you on that. It gives us an opportunity to really sit back, take some time out and really focus on what's important. I know for me, I've traveled for the past couple of years. And so being stable and being able to kind of reconnect with my husband and doing things with my children, it's definitely been a blessing. But even for my business, being able to kind of dive into the creative juices that I have, and launching, additional programs and things of that nature. So I'm actually kind of thankful for this downtime. I think we just have to make the best of it.
Absolutely. No sense in complaining about it because most times we're saying the opposite, right? Most times we're like, oh my God, if I just had a little bit more time, there's not enough hours in a day. And so this does, like you said, this gives us that amazing opportunity to kind of catch up with some of the things that we normally complain about because we just don't have the time capacity to do it all.
Right. I totally agree with that. Cheryl, one of the things that you talked about as I was introducing you to the audience, you mentioned being on the road all the time as a professional speaker. And one of the things that I love about you is that you encourage women to share their story. And so even for me, just a little bit about my story. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. It's been 11 years since I've experienced survivorship. I'm very, very thankful for that. But had the opportunity over the past few years to share my story. And for me, it just allows me to not only, it allowed me to heal myself, but also give hope and healing to those people out there who may have experienced the same thing. And so let's talk a little bit about the importance of sharing your story. How important is it for women to share their story, no matter what it is?
Yeah, there's something that I share with every client that I work with, and that's this simple fact. Your story is about you, but it ain't for you.
Hmm.
And I say that because, yes, you are the person who went through whatever the turmoil was, whatever the hurt or the pain or the trauma or the drama, you went through it. But the reality is, you're on the other side of it now and you're still standing. Like, there's so much power in being able to say, wow, I made it through that thing that I thought was going to break me, and I'm still standing stronger than ever before. But it
Yes.
becomes more powerful when you take the lessons that you learned and you help someone else who is currently in the pain that you were previously in.
Yes, I agree. Girl, you must be reading my mind. I'm telling you. So interesting. This is so interesting. You said, you whatever that thing is that you went to, you're still standing. And so still standing resonates with me because that's the name of my nonprofit, the Still Standing
Wow.
Alliance, and it's based off of Psalm 62 and 2. You are my rock and my salvation and my fortress. I shall not be moved. And so I look at that as I'm still standing. And so my first book was Wounds to Wisdom, I'm Still Standing, and really helping people to grow wise for those things in life that wounded you. But at the end of the day, you're still standing. So when you said that, I kind of felt that connection. So I think
Yeah.
it's amazing. And I love talking to people who actually get it. You get the concept of being able to be transparent. And the fact that you said your story is about you, but it ain't for you. Like, that's a tweetable moment right there. I'm going to tweet that a little bit later on and I'll make sure I tag you on that because that's a powerful statement. Oftentimes we think that things happen to us and we're like, well, why me? Well, why did this have to happen to me? Right. But like you said, at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's not about you at all, but it's for those people that we're called to minister to. In what ways can we share our story? I know some of us may be afraid to be on the stage and things of that nature. Do you help women in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes there's a confusion. People feel like, well, I have to want to be, a well-known motivational speaker to share my story. And that could not be further from the truth. The same way some people think, well, I have to be this amazing, dynamic orator in order to be able to share my story. And the reality is the most power in your story is you sharing it from its most vulnerable, raw, imperfect space. So when you share your mess, that becomes a connection to other people to let them know, number one, they're not alone in whatever it is that they're going through, that they are not the only person who's gone through that situation. And there's so much power in knowing that you're not alone. And number
Mhm.
two, that yes, they can come out on the other side of what they're going through right now stronger than they were before. So I just encourage women to just be bold enough to really bring everything that hurt you and bring it into a space where it almost becomes like a survival guide for someone else's healing. So we tend as women to hoard the hurt that we've been through, the hurt that we've gone through. And we hoard it to ourselves. We keep it inside. We don't share, especially in the African American community. Oftentimes we're taught, we don't tell our business. We keep our business to ourselves. I heard that as a young child growing up because I had a
Mhm.
strong Black mama. But
Mhm.
there's really more power and healing and freedom in sharing the mess that you've been through. So I challenge the women I work with not to allow themselves to run in hiding or in shame or guilt about their past, but rather to open themselves up to sharing that because it frees them, but it also becomes healing for another woman.
Yes. I think one of the things is oftentimes we feel shamed. And I often tell people I used to be ashamed of my story. I used to be afraid to share, not knowing what people were going to think of me or the people who are involved were going to think. So, being ashamed or the fear of the people who may have been involved in that story, what are they going to think about me? And then what about those
Mhm.
people who don't know me? What do they think, like, oh, she allowed this to happen to her. So the part you mentioned about being able to be vulnerable, what would you tell someone who had that fear, who had the fear of not really wanting to share their story because of that?
Yeah, I'll share something that one of my coaches, many of you might know Lisa Nichols. She's one of my
Mm-hmm.
my speaker coaches.
Yes.
And I've sat in intimate spaces with her. I flew out to Calabasas, California a couple years ago and sat in an 8-hour session with just the two of us, invested in a VIP day with her just to kind of up level where I was. And one of the things she always talks about is, all of us are going to have a day when we're born, and all of us have a day when we expire. But it's really not what matters about the date that you were born or the date that you expire. What matters is the dash that's in between. Like, what did you do with that dash that was in between?
Mm.
And so I think when we make our lives bigger than us, we become more interested and committed to sharing what we know to bless someone else than keeping all of that good juicy knowledge we have to ourselves, because there's something that you learned along the way. There's information that you gathered as you were going through the mess. There's strength that you developed that you didn't even know you had. There's confidence that you increase, self-worth, and the list goes on and on and on. So I think number one, just get to a place or work on getting to a place where you make your life bigger than just you. At the end of the day, you want to say, I used my unique fingerprint to touch someone else's life, to impact someone else where they were forever transformed. And when you can do that, that's when you know you have truly honored your God-given assignment, whatever that assignment is on this earth. And I think all of our assignments are directly connected to our stories.
I agree with you on that too. I like how you said our God given assignments. And like you said, a lot of times, some of the things that we go through in life, it's an assignment. It's an assignment from God. And unfortunately, we go through those things not only to make us stronger, but again, right, to bring hope and healing to those other people. So that's what I
Absolutely.
love about that. So, one of the principles of living the empowered life is to face your fears. And so that's why I wanted to really talk about facing your fears when you are sharing your story and how to overcome those fears. And so I think you explained that very good when you said, make your life bigger than just you. Make your life
Yeah, because
bigger
yeah.
than just you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I wanted to jump in because I'm so passionate about this. It's like when you make your life about someone else, a lot of times the fears that you have, it subsides. When I first decided I was going to get on a stage, a big stage, and share a message with women for them to believe that they were possible of more than what they were currently experiencing. Because for such a long time, I lived in a space where it wasn't even living, it was just existing. And
Mm,
I had to really develop the courage and the boldness and tenacity to go after what I want, to create the life that I was in love with and loved waking up to. So if I figure that out and then I keep that to myself and I don't share those secrets and the lessons and the failures as well as the successes, then really that's very selfish of me to have the solution to somebody else's pain. That's like somebody
mm,
sitting next to you and you know they have a migraine headache and you have Tylenol in your purse and you don't pull the Tylenol out and say, here you go, have some. That's what
mm,
it's like when we don't share our stories. So when you get out of your own way and get out of your own mind and say, I have to show up, I must speak up because somebody else's life, their transformation depends on it, a lot of times that fear subsides just in that moment. It's not to say that the fear is not going to come back again, because every time you're doing something that pushes you and stretches you, the fear is going to show up again. But it's your job to immobilize the fear in that moment, to give people who are hurting what they need to help them get a little bit of relief. And then you go back to your norm.
mm. Girl, that was good. That was juicy, as Lisa Nichols would say. That was juicy right there. So, real quick, just a shout out to Lisa Nichols. She's amazing. I went to Speak and Write to Make Millions back in 2014. And that prompted my first book and that prompted my first speaking tour, which was called Wounds to Wisdom. So, shout out to her
Yes.
for being very instrumental and inspirational for both of us. She's amazing,
She
absolutely
is.
amazing. So, I know if you went through her program that you're the bomb diggity for real. But I like how you said you have the solution to someone else's pain. You have the solution to someone else's pain. And if we don't offer that solution, it's like we're being selfish, right? At the end of the day, we're being selfish. And we didn't just go through that just for any old reason. You have the solution to somebody else's pain. Just that alone would give me the strength to face my fear and share my story. Knowing that I
Mhm.
have the solution to someone else's pain, I think that's very, very powerful. So, living the empowered life, just very quickly, a little bit about living the empowered life. There's 6 principles We talked about one of them, which is facing your fears. The other principle that I share in living the empowered life is to walk in your authentic power. And because we're talking about sharing your story, do you think there's a connection between being able to share your story and walking in your authentic power as a woman?
Indeed. I mean, the two are directly intertwined. Like you become most powerful when you're willing to share your story with other people and you do it from a space of, again, vulnerability and authenticity. So when I think about authenticity, it's me showing up as the real me. I'm not trying to be anybody else. Not trying to look like, walk like, talk like anybody else. I'm not trying to mimic their story because that's already taken. It is me
Mm-hmm.
powerfully saying, I am enough just as I am, and everything I've been through has made me who I am. So I'm going to stand on the power of that and speak up about what I've been through and not run from it, not hide from it, not try to pretend to be someone else and not compare myself to anybody else. I'm going to be authentically me every time so that the right people who I'm supposed to serve and support are magnetized to me. But when we try to be someone else, and there's this quote I love that comparison is the thief of all joy. When you
Yes.
compare yourself to someone else or you're trying to look like someone else because that thing looks good on them, it's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to look good on them. You know why? Because that's their gifting. That's their story. That is what they were supposed to go through. But your thing, whatever that special thing is, looks good on you to someone else when you walk in it authentically and you own it authentically.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I like to give personal stories and personal testimonies. When I first started speaking, sharing my story, getting on stage, I watched everybody in the industry who I thought was the greatest. And I wanted to not copy them, not their stories, because I had my own story, but kind of like imitating the way they dressed and their style. And let me tell you, Cheryl, it didn't work for me because I wasn't being my authentic self. And so the audience could tell. I would come out on stage and I would have on the perfect, dark pantsuit and the perfect pumps and hair pulled back to perfection. And that's not who Tamiko is. I'm a very outgoing, passionate person. I love bright colors. I love cute dresses. And so once I embraced who I was, then the audience began to embrace me. So I like to use those personal stories when we talk about being authentically you.
I love it. I
People,
love it.
thank you. And so people are more open to you. And so it
Yes.
took me a while. I was like, oh my gosh, I wasted 2 years trying to be perfect Patty. You know what I
Oh, me
mean?
too. Me too. Me too. When I came on the scene, I was like, oh, that's how I'm supposed to look. That's how I'm supposed to act. Oh, I'm supposed to speak like that. And I used to come across as a very technical speaker. It's so funny. A couple years ago, I was somewhere speaking at a conference and someone came up to me and was like, oh, my God, like I saw you speak. Maybe they saw me speak like 6 years before that. They were like, whoa, where did this person come from? I'm like, the real authentic Cheryl decided to show up and stop trying to look like, walk like what I thought was acceptable in the industry. So I think there's so much power in what you just said and sharing that story. And now it's like, okay, if you don't want this Cheryl, don't book and hire this Cheryl. Like go hire whoever the person is that you want to show up, because I'm always going to be this. I'm going to be a little bit loud. I'm going to be very animated. I'm going to be super passionate and energized. And if that's not what you want, it's okay. You have the right to hire someone who looks the part of what you're looking for your audience. But for me, I'm always going to stay true to who I am so that I can draw in and magnetize the people who are meant to be drawn into my voice and who I am meant to serve.
Absolutely. I love that. Oh, I love that. I love that. So, ladies, you got to make sure we're walking in our authentic power. And so, Dr. Cheryl, I like to make sure I call people by who they are, Dr. Cheryl. So, you're Dr. Cheryl Wood, but you're also Cheryl Empowers. So, can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about how you came up with that, Cheryl Empowers? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So ironically, when I started back in 2009 as an entrepreneur. I was still working a corporate job. A lot of people don't know this part about my story unless they've heard me speak before. But I actually worked in corporate America for 15 years as a legal secretary. So I went to a big office building in Washington, D.C. every day with my little suit, my little dress and my pumps. And I used to support very senior level people in law firms or in the law department of big companies. And so I would go in and I do that, but everything in my spirit was screaming out that Cheryl, you are suffocating. Like you are not
Mm.
supposed to be doing this. There is a bigger calling on your life. But there's this thing, Tamiko, called direct deposit. And I loved my direct deposit that I used to get every 2 weeks. So it kept me stuck in that space for a very long time until I became a mother. And once I became a mother of three, I was like, man, I got to show these kids what living really means, because your kids can feel when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. They can feel when you hate going to that job that you're going to every day and you're giving all of your energy to the job and then bringing the worst parts of you home to the kids and to your husband. They can feel that. They sense that energy. And that's what I was doing. So in 2009 was when I first launched my first entrepreneurial venture, which was actually a mommy t-shirt business called Moms Are the Best. So I kept my full-time gig, and on the weekends, I would go out and I would vend at various conferences and events and flea markets, anywhere I could set up a table and sell those mommy t-shirts. That was my beginning. I actually was detoured into speaking about 18 months into it. Later, I got a phone call from somebody at Morgan State University who heard about the t-shirt business and offered me an opportunity to come and speak at their annual women's conference to teach other moms how to start their businesses. And when they called me, I burst out laughing. I was like, I think you dialed the wrong person, because I'm not a speaker. That wasn't on my radar. I wasn't considering speaking. But I believe I was divinely detoured into speaking because that was my God-given assignment. That was my gift, the thing I was born to do, but also because I was in movement. And I think when you're in movement, you automatically position yourself to have doors of opportunity open for you that will directly and divinely detour you where you're supposed to be. So for me, yeah, when I first started taking the stage, I was nervous. I was unsure. I didn't know, is this really the thing that's going to be my passion and my purpose? Should I follow this thing? And then there were people who were making me feel like I didn't belong because I was new on the circuit. So a lot of stuff came with that. But when you're in motion, you're moving directly towards the thing that you're being called to do. There's no stopping you. There's just no stopping you.
And I love that you said divinely detoured. Divinely detoured. That's amazing. I like that. And then your gifts will make room for you. You talked about the t-shirt business and, how you got an opportunity to speak at Morgan State. And I mean, I just believe that our gifts will make room for us. And we have no idea, like even going back to fear, we have no idea what's on the other side of fear, right? On the other side of fear, it's probably, you being divinely detoured, like you said. So I think that's very, very powerful. So Cheryl, I know oftentimes we get into businesses based on our personal stories, personal things that we've gone through or personal things that we've overcome. And so you just shared a little bit about your start as to how you actually got into this business of speaking and sharing your story and being able to be on stages all over the world. So how have your life experiences prepared you for the work that you're doing today? So, you started off with the t-shirt business and now you're like a world renowned sought after speaker. So how has your life experiences prepared you for that?
I think that's such a great question because I think sometimes as women, we discount all of the experience that we can bring into what we're doing or what we want to do. And I did the same thing for a long time. I didn't take full inventory of my intellectual property. I didn't take full inventory of everything that I could bring into the speaker world. So all I was thinking was, for such a long time, I felt like I wasn't qualified. And that's why I tell every woman I work with, look, don't even focus on being qualified. If you know you've been called, pursue it and do it. Because for a long time, I didn't feel qualified. I didn't have the whole list of, this. I didn't have, letters behind my name. It was so many things I felt like I didn't have. But you have got to know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm going to do it. I'm going to show up. I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to allow anybody else to put their toxic thinking on me to feel like, oh, I'm not meant to be in this space. So you have to really dig deep and know that this thing is what you were born to do. And when you're born to do it, you're like, nothing's going to stop me. There's a level of courage and boldness and tenacity that comes with knowing this is what you were born to do. This is what you were meant to do. So for me, when I finally made the decision that I was going to enter into the speaker industry, it was a lot of taking chances. It was a lot of taking risks. It was a lot of showing up, even when people didn't think I belonged in the room, but I just kept showing up. So asking yourself that question, am I not showing up because somebody else thinks I don't belong there? Because
Oh.
really, that's none of your business who thinks you belong there, who doesn't think you belong there. Do you think you belong there? And if so, then guess what? You pull up a seat at the table, or you bring your own table, you create your own table, whatever you have to do. It's important. It's imperative. No, let me scratch that. It's mandatory that you show up in the world with your greatness, because somebody is going to miss out on their transformation if you don't show up. Somebody's going to miss out on the trajectory of their life being shifted if you decide to stay comfortable where you are because it's easier in that place. So for me, it was easier for me to stay at a desk at a cubicle in corporate America and get direct deposit because that was the safe route. But it was like, okay, but is the safe route the route that's really going to leave your fingerprint on the world? Is the safe route the route that's really going to allow you to create legacy? And I wanted something bigger. I wanted legacy. I wanted my fingerprint left. I wanted to show my kids what it looked like to really have a big dream and pursue it, even when the dream scares you and you don't know the full how. You don't have a full master blueprint, but you keep going until you figure that thing out. So you must keep pressing forward. You must give yourself the opportunity to unveil who you're really born to be.
That's powerful right there. Keep showing up. And it's mandatory that you show up for your greatness. I love that you said that it's mandatory. You were like, no, scratch that. It's mandatory that you show up for your greatness. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, get up, dress up, and show up. And so no matter what, no matter how we feel, no matter what's happening around us, we have to get up, dress up, and show up, because if we don't show up, like you said, we're going to be missing out on certain things. You mentioned that, we may not be able to live a legacy if we don't show up, right? And so one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is creating a living legacy. So how can we create a living legacy by using our voice? Or actually, go back to what you said, by showing up. How can we create living legacies by showing up and using our voice?
Yeah. So for me, I'm laughing because I always say this, and I say it, kind of in a funny way, but I mean every word of it. Like every day I wake up, Tamiko, and I'm like, somebody's going to get a speech today. Somebody is going to get a speech, and it might be my kids that's going to get the speech. It might be my husband. It might be somebody at the gas station, but somebody's going to get a speech because that's my gift and that's a part of my legacy. And I know that. I'm so assured of that being the thing that God has given me to use to touch other people's lives that I don't dare wake up any day and not use it. Like that's like somebody giving you a gift, wrapping it up beautifully, putting a pretty bow on it, and they hand it to you, and they come back 2 days later and it's still sitting on the table, or they come back 6 months later and it's still sitting there. You haven't even opened it up and unwrapped it. That shows a lack of appreciation and gratitude for the gift that was given to you. So that's the same space we're in when we don't unwrap our gifts and share our gifts. So when I talk about legacy, I love that you said, living legacy, because that's what I believe in. And I say living legacy because I don't want to wait until I'm like 95. I can't half see. I can't hear. I'm about to check out of this place. And now y'all talking about how great I am. No, tell me while I'm here. Give me my flowers while I'm here. Let me know that I'm touching your life while I'm here. So a living legacy, I want to be living in the legacy that I am creating and how I'm reaching back and touching other people's lives. So it's priceless when somebody sends me an email and says, Dr. Cheryl, oh my God, I met you 3 years ago and I heard you speak at XYZ event. And because of that, everything you poured into me, this is what I'm doing now. Hey, Dr. Cheryl, you might not know it, but I was in such a dark space when I heard you speak on XYZ podcast or interview because my son had just tried to take his life and I was feeling like I didn't have the strength to make it through that. But hearing your words pierced my soul. Like that is legacy. It's legacy is something you pass down to someone else. So what are you passing down? For me, I want my legacy to be connected with passing down empowerment, boldness, tenacity, living a life that you are in love with because you were intentional enough to be willing to do the work and make the deposits that would allow you to live a life that you're in love with.
Whew, girl, you are dropping some serious nuggets and I'm loving every minute of it. And I'm trying to take as many notes as I can. You say so many powerful things, so I'm taking as many notes as I can. But I love the living legacy. Oftentimes we think about the legacies that we live, that we leave when we're no longer here. But what about having a living legacy here today? And then living a life that you are in love with. That's powerful by itself. Living a life, girl, that's a speaking engagement. That's a workshop right there. Living a
That's a
life
work.
that you were in love with. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I love everything about it. And Dr. Cheryl, you you're very passionate. I can tell by the tone of your voice, the way that you're speaking. You're passionate about the work that you do. And so that's what I admire about you, that I can hear the passion in your voice. And so I just want to say thank you for the work that you're doing to help people to share their stories, to help people to be a living legacy, right? To help people to fall in love with the life that they're in right now. I think is so important because so many people are living, I don't want to say in pain, but they're suffering in silence, right? A
Yes.
lot of people are suffering in silence, especially now with COVID-19 and just crazy things happening in the world. They're suffering in silence. But when people like you come around who's very passionate about the work that you're doing, it makes a huge difference. We have a lot of people that do this work. They're life coaches and things of that nature. But when you're doing it with the right intentions, it shows. So I just wanted to tell you, like it shows. Your passion shows. The
Thank you.
intent to make a difference really shows. And so I love that. I love
Thank
that
you.
about you.
I
So
love
thank
it.
you so
Yeah.
much for just being intentional and really loving the work that you do. I can tell that you love it.
I do. Thank you for acknowledging that. I do. I told you every day, somebody gonna get a speech.
Yes, I got a speech today and it
Right.
was good. The Living the Empowered Life community got a speech. So this is great. I'm loving our conversation that we're having. I really want to make sure that we know about any events or any initiatives that you have coming up. So do you have anything, any program, an event, or some type of challenge, anything coming up that you want to share?
Yeah, thank you so much for extending that invitation for me to share. So I actually launched a new women's group called Elevation Entourage. And the reason I named it that is because I believe that no woman entrepreneur should be running her entrepreneurial race on her own. Like, we're in quarantine right now, but some women have gone into quarantine way before we were actually under a stay-at-home quarantine
Mm-hmm.
order. Like, they were trying to run their race by themselves, feeling alone. There is no reason for you to be alone on this journey, because the journey is filled with obstacles and setbacks and roadblocks. And sometimes you need to pull on somebody else's strength because you might not have the strength to pull on your own to make it through whatever that challenge is or bounce back from whatever that setback was. So when you're in a community of like minds, people who want to celebrate you, who want to elevate you and empower and uplift you, and who want to hold your feet to the fire for what you say you're going to do in the world, that's when you experience elevation and growth. And so the Elevation Entourage was just recently birthed. If anyone is interested in learning more about becoming a part of, we call it the EE Squad. If
Mm-hmm.
anybody's interested in learning more about that, you can go to elevationentourage.com, elevationentourage.com. We just launched it about a week ago, and we already have about 175 women who said yes to being a part of the squad. And we're looking to grow those numbers because there is so much power in numbers. And there's something that you know that I don't know, and something that another woman in the group knows that I didn't have any idea about. So when we pull our resources together and we really have that abundance mindset that I can tell you something, you can share something with me, and there's still going to be enough for all of us to get our piece of the pie, that's when we really excel, elevate, and grow.
I love that. Elevation entourage. I love that. And I
Yeah.
think we all need somebody that we can be accountable to, or somebody be accountable to us. Monday mornings, every Monday morning at 9 o'clock, I meet with my accountability partner. And it's always a blessing that we can be accountable to each other and make sure that we're doing the things that we're supposed to do. But imagine that on a bigger level. Right. So I'm looking at you doing this on a bigger level with Elevation Entourage. And I think it is so needed because oftentimes we feel alone in our businesses. We may not have the team that we need. We feel alone. And I think this is great. So elevationentourage.com is the website for that. And so I wish you the best with that. I think that's going to be amazing. Definitely an amazing initiative.
Thank you. And there's only 3 rules really to be a part of that community, which is no excuses, no comparison, and no mean girls.
Ooh,
Those
no
are our 3 rules.
excuses, no comparison, and no mean girls.
That's
I
it.
love it. I love it. No mean girls.
That's right. We don't have time for that. We got to elevate each other. My mama always told me, Cheryl, Go where you are celebrated, not where you are tolerated. So I only go to places where I am celebrated and accelerated.
Yes, I love that. Cheryl, I want to make sure, well, you've already shared a whole lot, but I just want to make sure that I'm not leaving anything out. I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to share if you have something on your heart that you want to share, or something, a final thought or a charge for the audience.
Yeah, there's a quote that I really love and I kind of live my life by, and it's by Tony Robbins, who is a motivational guru in the world. And the quote says, "A real decision is measured by the fact that you've taken a new action. And if there is no new action, you have not truly decided." So my charge and my challenge for everyone who listens to this is to get out and take some action towards creating this empowered life that you want, for creating a life that you're in love with, where you're excited to get up in the morning, not dreading getting up in the morning. Like, you are enough, you are capable, and you are worthy just as you are to get to define whatever life looks like for you. No one else has the right to dictate it. No one else has to give you permission. No one else has to validate you. You already came stamped as pre-approved from a higher source. So remember that and get out into the world every day and share your gift and share your story.
Yes, I love it. I love it. You are enough. You are capable and you are worthy. You heard it first from Cheryl Wood. Dr. Cheryl, thank you so much for being with us today. I appreciate you. So before we go, very quickly, how can we get in touch with you outside of the Living the Empowered Life podcast?
Yes, I am all across social media. My handle is Cheryl Empowers. That's with an S on the end, Cheryl Empowers. I hang out on IG. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. And also my website is CherylEmpowers.com. And if you go over to that website, I actually have a freebie there, because I'm really, as we were talking about, I'm so big on helping women to unleash the power of their story and their voice. So one of the things I know every woman needs is a signature story. Like, what's the story that's going to connect with your brand identity? So if you go there entering your name and email, you get the signature story template, which helps you to kind of sort through, okay, I have all these amazing life stories, but what's the one that I want to retell, relive, and repeat even 20 to 30 years from now? And that's going to be the thing that people know me for and identify me as when I walk into the room before I open my mouth. So CherylEmpowers.com.
I love it. Thank you so much again. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Living the Empowered Life podcast. I hope that you enjoyed my conversation with the amazing Dr. Cheryl Wood, and that you were able to draw some inspiration as you continue on your journey of living an empowered life. And remember, every time you share your story, it's a reminder that you lived it and that it has value. So ladies, listen. It's time to discover and live your life purpose. It's time to value yourself. It's time to set goals that are going to move you forward in life. It's time to rebuild your confidence. It's time to fearlessly walk in your authentic power. And ladies, it's time to live the empowered life.